Cyclone Nargis caused the worst natural disaster in the recorded history of Myanmar during early May 2008. The cyclone made landfall in Myanmar on Friday, the 2nd of May 2008, sending a storm surge 40 kilometers up the densely populated Irrawaddy Delta, causing catastrophic destruction and at least 138,000 fatalities. The Labutta Township alone was reported to have 80,000 dead, with about 10,000 more deaths in Bogale. There were around 55,000 people missing and many other deaths were found in other towns and areas. Although the Myanmar government's official death toll may have been underreported, and there have been allegations that government officials stopped updating the death toll after 138,000 to minimize political fallout, the feared second wave of fatalities from disease and lack of relief efforts never materialized. Damage was estimated at over $62,988 million, which made it the most damaging cyclone ever recorded in this basin. Overview. The name Nargis is an Urdu word meaning daffodil. The word has its roots in the Persian name Nargis, which has the same meaning. The first named storm of the 2008 North Indian Ocean cyclone season, Nargis, developed on the 27th of April in the central area of Bay of Bengal. Initially it tracked slowly northwestward and, encountering favorable conditions, it quickly strengthened. Dry air weakened the cyclone on the 29th of April, though after beginning a steady eastward motion Nargis rapidly intensified to attain peak winds of at least 165 km per hour on the 2nd of May according to IMD observations. The JTWC assessed peak winds of 217 km per hour, making it a weak Category 4 cyclone on the SSHS. The cyclone moved ashore in the Irrawaddy division of Myanmar at peak intensity and, after passing near the major city of Yangon, the storm gradually weakened until dissipating near the border of Myanmar and Thailand. Nargis is the deadliest named cyclone in the North Indian Ocean basin, as well as the second deadliest named cyclone of all time, behind Typhoon Nina of 1975. Including unnamed storms like the 1970 Ebola cyclone. Nargis is the 8th deadliest cyclone of all time, but an uncertainty between the deaths caused by Nargis and those caused by other cyclones could put Nargis as 7th deadliest or higher, because the exact death toll is uncertain. Nargis was the first tropical cyclone to strike the country since Cyclone Mala made landfall in 2006, which was slightly stronger, but had a significantly lower impact. According to reports, Indian authorities had warned Myanmar about the danger that Cyclone Nargis posed 48 hours before it hit the country's coast. Relief efforts were slowed for political reasons as Myanmar's military rulers initially resisted large-scale international aid. U.S. President George W. Bush said that an angry world should condemn the way Myanmar's military rulers were handling the aftermath of such a catastrophic cyclone. Myanmar's military junta finally accepted aid a few days after India's request was accepted, hampering the relief efforts. Only 10 days after the cyclone, nearby central China was hit by a massive earthquake, known as the Sichuan earthquake, which measured 7.9 in magnitude and it alone had taken 87,476 lives and caused $85 billion in damage, making it the costliest disaster in Chinese history and third costliest disaster ever known. Furthermore, some donated aid items were found to be available in the country's black market, and Myanmar's junta warned on the 15th of May that legal action would be taken against people who traded or hoarded international aid. Meteorological history. In the last week of April 2008, 2008, an area of deep convection persisted near a low-level circulation in the Bay of Bengal about 1,150 kilometres east-southeast of Chennai, India. With good outflow and low wind shear, the system slowly organized as its circulation consolidated. At 0300 UTC on the 27th of April, the India Meteorological Department classified the system as a depression, and 9 hours later the system intensified into a deep depression. At the same time, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center classified it as Tropical Cyclone 01B. With a ridge to its north, the system tracked slowly north-northwestward as banding features improved. At 0000 UTC, 5:30 AM Indian Standard Time, on the 28th of April, the IMD upgraded the system to cyclonic storm Nargis while it was located about 550 kilometers east of Chennai, India. On the 28th of April, Nargis became nearly stationary while between ridges to its northwest and southeast. That day the JTWC upgraded the storm to cyclone status, the equivalent of a minimal hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. Around the same time, the IMD upgraded Nargis to a severe cyclonic storm. The cyclone developed a concentric eye feature, which is an eye wall outside the inner dominant eye wall, with warm waters aiding in further intensification. Early on the 29th of April, the JTWC estimated Nargis reached winds of 160 km per hour, and at the same time the IMD classified the system as a very severe cyclonic storm. Initially, the cyclone was forecast to strike Bangladesh or southeastern India. Subsequently, the cyclone became disorganized and weakened due to subsidence and drier air. As a result, deep convection near the center markedly decreased. At the same time, the storm began in motion to the northeast around the periphery of a ridge to its southeast. The circulation remained strong despite the diminishing convection, though satellite intensity estimates using the Dvorak technique indicated the cyclone could have weakened to tropical storm status. By late on the 29th of April, convection had begun to rebuild, though immediate re-strengthening was prevented by increased wind shear. On the 1st of May 2008, after turning nearly due eastward, Cyclone Nargis began rapidly intensifying. Due to greatly improved outflow in association with an approaching upper-level trough, strengthening continued as it developed a well-defined eye with a diameter of 19 kilometers, and early on the 2nd of May the JTWC estimated the cyclone reached peak winds of 215 kilometers per hour as it approached the coast of Myanmar, making it a Category 4 storm. At the same time, the IMD assessed Nargis as attaining peak winds of 165 km per hour. Around 1200 UTC on the 2nd of May, Cyclone Nargis made landfall in the Irrawaddy division of Myanmar at peak strength. The storm gradually weakened as it proceeded east over Myanmar, with its proximity to the Andaman Sea preventing rapid weakening. Its track turned to the northeast due to the approach of a mid-latitude trough to its northwest, passing just north of Yangon with winds of 130 km per hour. Early on the 3rd of May the IMD issued its final advisory on the storm. It quickly weakened after turning to the northeast toward the rugged terrain near the Myanmar-Thailand border, and after deteriorating to minimal tropical storm status, the JTWC issued its last advisory on Nargis. Impact: Western Bay of Bengal on 27 and the 28th of April, the cyclone enhanced the southwest monsoon over Sri Lanka, which resulted in very heavy rain. flooding and landslides being reported within the western, Sabaragamuwa and southern provinces. The districts of Ratnapur and Kegal were the most affected, where more than 3,000 families were displaced. Thousands of houses were flooded, with 21 reported destroyed. The rainfall left 4,500 people homeless, and more than 35,000 people were affected on the island. 3 people were reported injured on the island, while 2 were reported dead. The India Meteorological Department recommended that fishermen should not sail on the ocean during the passage of Nargis. Strong waves and gusty winds were expected along the Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh coastline in India. Additionally, the influence of the cyclone lowered temperatures along the Indian coastline, which had been affected by severe heatwave. When the cyclone was originally expected to strike near Bangladesh, officials requested farmers to hurriedly finish harvesting the rice crop. At the time, the country was experiencing severe food shortages from Cyclone Nargis in the previous year and flooding earlier in the year, and a direct strike from Nargis would have resulted in destroyed crops due to strong winds. Myanmar. The United Nations estimated that 1.50 million people were severely affected by this cyclone. Estimates of the people missing were 53,836, with 84,537 confirmed dead. Some NGOs estimated that the final death toll would be over 100,000. At least 10,000 people were reported to have perished in the delta town of Bogale alone. Nargis was the deadliest tropical cyclone worldwide since the 1970 Ebola cyclone, which killed nearly 500,000 people. One aid worker claimed that the death toll from the cyclone and its aftermath might reach 300,000, if correct. Nargis would be the second deadliest cyclone ever and the 5th deadliest natural disaster of the 20th century, after the Yellow River floods, the 1976 Tangshan earthquake and the Ebola cyclone in Bangladesh. Because Myanmar's military leaders did not count the full death toll from Nargis, and the fact that thousands more people were missing or washed out at sea, it was feared up to 1 million people might have died in this disaster. If this proves to be the case, Nargis would be the deadliest cyclone ever recorded and the 3rd deadliest natural disaster recorded, behind the Yellow River floods of 1887 and 1931 in China. The final death toll from Nargis was at least 146,000, because there were 90,000 people confirmed dead at one point and 56,000 were missing. They were never found, so it was assumed that these 56,000 people were killed. Thus, its death toll would exceed that of the 1991 storm and make it the deadliest since the 1970 storm. It is now thought that hundreds of thousands of people will never be found after Nargis because their bodies have decayed, been buried, or were washed out to sea. Andrew Kirkwood, country director of the British charity Save the Children, stated, "We're looking at 50,000 dead and millions of homeless. I'd characterize it as unprecedented in the history of Myanmar and on an order of magnitude with the effect of the tsunami on individual countries. There might well be more dead than the tsunami caused in Sri Lanka." Foreign aid workers estimated that 2 million to 3 million were homeless, often going to one of 260,000 refugee camps in Myanmar. It was the worst disaster in Myanmar's history, whose total damage is comparable to that of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Thousands of buildings were destroyed in the town of Labutta in the Irrawaddy division. State television reported that 75% of buildings had collapsed and 20% had the roofs ripped off. One report indicated that 95% of buildings in the Irrawaddy Delta area were destroyed. The Ministry of Religious Affairs stated that 1,163 temples were destroyed in Irrawaddy division and 284 in Yangon division. The Burmese government formally declared 5 regions, Yangon, Irrawaddy, Bago divisions and Mon and Kayan states, as disaster areas. A United Nations official commented as follows: "It's a bad situation. Almost all the houses are smashed. People are in a terrible situation." Another UN official said that the Irrawaddy Delta was hit extremely hard not only because of the wind and rain but because of the storm surge. A diplomat in Yangon told the Reuters news agency that the area around him looked like a war zone. As a result of the cyclone, burst sewage mains caused the landscape to flood with waste, ruining the rice crop. The Daily Telegraph reported that food prices in Myanmar could be affected. Wiradhat, Deputy Director General of Thailand's Department of Information, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, stated on the 7th of May 2008 that, in reference to a report submitted by Bansan Bunik, the Thai ambassador in Yangon, conditions in the city had deteriorated and that most businesses and markets were closed. Mr. Wiradhat also reported that the locals faced even more adversity in basic subsistence because local food prices had increased 2- or 3-fold.